and I was out pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, trying to get people to vote this money so my kids could go to school full time. And all of a sudden I thought, I'm trying to get everybody to vote and I can't even vote myself.
Right.
I thought, if I'm going to raise kids here, I need to become a citizen. So that's when I became a citizen. And that was fine. I was proud of that, and I was glad I could vote.
Do you remember where we went to celebrate after?
There's some ice cream.
Farrell's.
Farrell's.
Oh,
Yeah, big
Farrell's.
ice cream
And they
parlor.
had, she got this huge sundae that was like this big, like for everybody. And it was this mound of ice cream with all these American flags sticking up out of it. And
Yeah, and we all ate it. And
yeah,
it
I mean,
wasn't just
and
for
the
me.
Brazzalis
Yeah,
were
it was a nice
there too,
celebration.
and there were, you know.
Yeah, and I was the only non-Hispanic, I think, in the citizenship group. It was kind
Oh.
of interesting.
How old
And
were
I-
you when that all happened?
Early 40s?
No,
30s?
not even.
Not that old. I was
30s?
34 or 5 or something like that.
Say,
Yeah, and I had to, the citizenship test seemed so ridiculous. It was like, things like, yes, George Washington was a good man, you know. It
Huh.
was
oh, they were
not very,
subjective questions.
Really?
I thought it was really, it was, I mean, I had learned far more about American government than this book ever required. It was really, really very basic. But then I had to be, it was an oral interview before some lawyer, I think a citizenship lawyer, and then, so I had to pass a test.
Wow.
But, so it's really been interesting. In later years, I feel more and more proud of being Canadian. It's just strange. I think I'm driving everybody crazy talking about, well, in Canada, they do.
Is there anything you wish we understood better about you?
About me?
Yeah.
That I don't hear.
Mm.
Well, we're all
I
gonna
don't,
get
I
there
don't
now.
know. What? That I like to know all the things you're doing and
Your need for contact.
yeah.
What did for what?
Contact.
Contact.
Context.
Just to touch, needs to touch base.
Mhm.
And it can be just
Feel
short,
in
but
touch.
loves to know what's going on with her people.
Did you pass that test?
AP test.
Well, it's a great, great pleasure in life to, to see your offspring come along and live good lives and what they're doing. I mean, there's a lot of frustration to growing old. There's a lot that you can't do, that my wish to do is always far greater than what my ability and my stamina is. I just get too tired and, don't handle stress well and, all kinds of things. So it's very satisfying to look around and think that you kids are doing well. So I hope it doesn't make you feel a burden that I always want to know how you are.
Do you have any financial advice for people like your grandchildren just starting out in life?
Always, every time you ever earn money, you should save a portion of it. Every time. Because it's easier to save than to go back when you've overspent. It's so hard to cut back on your way of spending or your way of living. But if you save for your own future, it really gets a lot better. Does that make sense?
This is better. I mean, this is a testament to that being here right now, I think.
Yeah.
Frugality.
Pays off long term,
Yeah.
I have a question. What did your like growing up? How did your parents picture your like what your parents like growing up to you.
Well, I don't know in what way you really mean that, but one of the interesting things about me growing up was that my grandmother lived with us from the time I was 2 until she died when I was 16. So she was really a central part of my life. My mother worked, she had her own business, she was a real modern woman. She started her own business in the 40s. And she said she had to go to work because my grandmother lived with us, and you couldn't have 2 women in the kitchen. That was her life. So anyway, I had all that extra nurturing from my grandmother. She was a really, she always made cookies. She was always there if I skinned my knee or something. And then as I got into teenager, there was a lot of looking after of her because she wasn't as able.
Do you think taking care of her at all made you want to become a social worker?
Oh, I think so. One time I was at a social work training, and the person asked how many of us social workers had some caregiving experience when they were young, like I did with my grandmother. But when I was in high school, we kind of had to share our times at home. Like we'd have to figure out if my parents and my brother wanted to do something Friday night, then I would stay home, or things. Somebody had to be home with grandma. And one time my parents went off on some small vacation for a week or a trip or something or other, and grandma wanted me to. I was supposed to cook this chicken, and we lived in a 2-story house, and grandma couldn't come down the stairs and go up, so she was upstairs, and she had me take this chicken up to her with a flashlight so she could check to make sure I had cleaned it all well enough, and anyway, that's just a funny memory, but yeah, I mean, she was a big part of my life. But compared to how we live here, my parents were very formal. They always set the table really nicely. They always ate right on time and said the blessing and did. They had a lot of ritual to their life. It wasn't a hectic life. And I think there's a lot of value in that. Does that make sense? I mean, there was a calmness.
It was predictable.
Predictable, yeah. Right.
And this was Grandma Moore, your mom's mom, who lived with you.
And she was the only grandparent that was alive at that point. Her husband died when I was 2, and my dad's parents died before my parents were married. My grandfather was a Methodist minister.
In Quebec City, right?
Well, he was born in Quebec City, but the rules of the Methodist Church at that time were that as a minister, you could only stay 4 years in a church, and then they moved you to another church. So my dad moved to a whole lot of different Canadian cities. He was born in Quebec, and he graduated from high school in Lethbridge, Alberta, which is just north of Glacier National Park, in Alberta. And then he died in in Edmonton, where my parents then got married.
So then in high school, would you say your parents were pretty strict, or do you think you had a lot of freedom to do whatever you kind of wanted?
They never.
Did they ever hold you back from stuff that you really wanted to do?
How can I describe that? They were never forceful, and mean and tough. I just knew I dare not do certain things. I just knew I better behave, and I mean, they were good, but I was I don't think, looking back on it, I felt very free as a child to just do a whole lot of interesting things. I knew I was really supposed to study. I think that was one thing I think wrong with my life, is I grew up thinking that I was so smart, but that was all I was good for, was getting good grades. I mean, there's more to life than getting good grades, even though. Does that make sense? I shouldn't say that, should I? I'll ruin these children.
Trying to drop out.
Well, I always liked school. I really did. I liked learning, and I still like learning. It wasn't my parents' fault.
What do you wish we understood about aging?
You know, my friends and I, we often talk about this. And I think it's very hard to describe. It's very hard to let other people know what it's like. There's a lot of sense of loss, you know, because you don't see things getting better. You see things getting worse. Everybody around you is getting sick and dying. And, you know, so it takes a certain amount of energy or positive, deliberate positive thinking to make the most of the good in your life and stay positive and so forth. Does that make sense? I mean, it's, yeah. I love this book I'm reading, and I think Derek's been reading it, and Terrence has been reading it, called The Book of Joy. Have you seen that book? I wish everybody would read it. I think it's really, really good. And I think it helps you to focus on the present and what's happening, and the power that you have to choose to be positive and joyful no matter what's going on around you. That's a real interesting goal, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah.